open and no transportation. Exempt only for frontline health workers, authorized government officials, medical and or humanitarian reasons, as well as transport of basic services and necessities. Food and essential needs will be delivered in homes, care of the respective local government units, and there will be heightened presence of uniformed personnel in the quarantine area to ensure compliance on the aforesaid measures.
All right, Mr. Secretary, let's go through those details one by one now and how this will look like for the entire public. You said strict home quarantine shall be implemented in all households, Mr. Secretary. So does that mean that the curfew that was talked about before, that's no longer at play? This is an entire duration of days on end of people being kept in their homes.
It means that you have to stay at home because work will be suspended.
Mr. Secretary,
there will be suspension work.
Mr. Secretary, can you clarify that for us? You're saying that there will be, because of this enhanced community quarantine, that you're now imposing work stoppage.
There is suspension of work if there can be no arrangement on between the employer and the employee and how to do it.
So it's entirely up to the private sector now?
No. The general rule is there is suspension of work. With respect to government employees, there should be skeleton force.
So when it comes to factories, manufacturing sector, Mr. Secretary, the general rule is unless there is an alternate that can be provided, that there will be suspension of work. Am I correct?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Also, in the definition of an enhanced community quarantine, Mr. Secretary, it is stated here that transportation shall be suspended. What does that mean exactly? There will no longer be public utility vehicles out on the road, no private cars as well, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, when you say there is quarantine in your homes, that means you don't have to travel. So you don't need transportation for that. Is that only for medical and humanitarian reasons?
What happens, Mr. Secretary, to those who live outside Metro Manila, for example, who found themselves here before the enhanced community quarantine was declared? Are you expecting a mad rush for these people to go home?
Go home where?
Go to their respective homes, yes.
Well, they will be allowed to go home because they're supposed to reside and stay home after the work.
All right, so what we saw earlier this morning, the reverse is expected. The aim here is to just decongest the entire Luzon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is also a provision.
Of course, the ultimate aim is to stop the spread of the virus.
All right. There's
and
also
to protect ourselves and each other.
Mr. Secretary, there's also a line here that says provision for food and essential health services shall be regulated. What exactly does that mean?
Well, it means that the respective local government units will have to create a system where food and essential needs will be delivered to the homes of their communities. In other words, we will not allow a rush to get food and supply because there will be sufficient food and supply.
So how will this look like for the public, Mr. Secretary? When is this effective? Is it effective immediately?
Effective immediately, yes.
Okay, so then...
You must remember that we have this community quarantine effective 2 days ago, and we're just expanding it to the entire zone.
So do we expect supermarkets, groceries?
Again?
Do we expect groceries, supermarkets, wet markets to be closed as well, Mr. Secretary, and just rely on the LGUs to provide the citizens with the food and sustenance that they need? How will it look like?
Since it says that food and essential needs will be delivered at homes, the presumption is they will be getting it from the source, the LGUs.
But still, it's,
So they will be open. Whether or not all groceries or markets will be open, I have to ask the Secretary to get that.
yeah, so
Or
that's
the
still,
President.
right, so that's still not clear.
Yeah, with respect to that, what is important is there is sufficient food supply.
Now, these are changing times, Mr. Secretary, and as you know, the situation remains dynamic, and the information has to be brought out there, especially as the nation fights COVID-19. And for that, people rely on media. How will this affect the media, Mr. Secretary? This enhanced community quarantine.
People will not be restricted. It's the same. Except only that they have to have access only to the authorized persons to register in PDC.
So it will, work for media will continue. There's no.
Yeah.
All right. What about for the supplies? For example, I know that was discussed as well in your earlier briefing today. Supplies and the mask supplies and personal protective equipment and all that. Has that been resolved already?
Come again, you're breaking up.
The issue about the supply of personal protective equipment, has that been resolved already, Mr.
Did you
Secretary?
say food supply? Did you
No.
say food supply?
No, I said the supply of personal protective equipment, PPEs, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah. Well, I talked with Secretary Duque and he said they're coming. They have made several orders, thousands.
Do you
I've
also,
also talked with the PNP and they said same, they have made the orders. They're forthcoming.
now, I have here a copy of the memo regarding the enhanced community quarantine. It also says here that there will be a restriction on the non-essential entry of people to the contained area, especially persons who are at high risk of being infected. And it goes on to say those who are 60 years old and above, those who are immunocompromised or with comorbidities, and pregnant women. What are the exceptions here, Mr. Secretary?
I don't have a copy of the exceptions here. I'll let you know as soon as I have.
Okay. We're waiting for the President to address the nation once again. When is that going to happen? I understand it's slated to happen later today.
It will come out soon, anytime soon.
Is he going to address the nation live, or is he taping his, recording his address?
It is already in the page.
Okay.
We
So-
just finished delivering the speech.
All right. All right. So once
It's a delayed document.
all right. So once again, Mr. Secretary, the palace has imposed an enhanced community quarantine that is short of saying that there's a total lockdown in the entire Luzon, and this is effective immediately.
Yes, and we would like to, again, convey to our people that the President's ultimate goal is to save ourselves from ourselves. Because we are the soldiers, as we said, in speech, but at the same time we are our own enemies. We have to do everything to protect ourselves. As we protect ourselves, we protect our neighbor's house. It is a matter of national survival, a matter of life and death, so we have to sacrifice. And we're glad that, by the way, Ramon An has written the President, and he assured the President that food supply so far has always services establishments concerned are sufficient for the next 6 months.
Have you received any more assurances from the other Taipans, from the other conglomerates in the country?
Oh yes, in fact, well, I've talked to most of them. They said that they will cooperate, and the president also asked them to, for those, because there will be a complete lockdown or the suspension of work, to give, if we can give a Christmas bonus, I think we can also give a 1 month assistance to those who will be receiving their salaries because they are asking for more.
Mr. Secretary, just as
And
a
by the
final,
way,
yeah,
I
go
don't know
ahead.
if you know it, if you have heard about it, the ADB is giving $3 million in grant